Hey traders, this is John Fortune here of this week's Weekly Forex Forecast for the 25th of November to the 29th of November 2019. As always, we're going to start off by looking at the US dollar index and crude oil before running through a number of markets, looking at the key levels of support and resistance in the process. I'm also going to be highlighting some of the targets that we're going to be looking for in this coming week and also for the weeks ahead. So I hope you're having a nice weekend. Let's jump over to the charts and see what the money is this week. As always, we're going to start off by looking at the US dollar. Now, last week we were looking further advances to the upside in the US dollar, and we were looking for a bounce from the 98 area, which we highlighted not just last week but the previous week. We were looking for a pullback to this area and then a bounce to the upside. Last week we started the week sitting at the key area of broken resistance from the past, turning support at 9800, but we didn't actually bounce from this area. We didn't hold a support, we just traded straight through it, so there were no bullish formations or patterns or anything to drive this to the upside. And what happened was we came back, we tested it on the underside, we tested it on the underside again, so broken support, turning resistance, and we broke back above it. So very simply put, going into this week, we are looking for further advances to the upside now, as we are looking for broken resistance from the past, looking to turn supports here at the 9800 this week. This is going to be an area we're going to start to look further advances to the upside in the dollar index. First of all, up towards the next key area of resistance to the upside, and the target set at the 98.64. And if we can get a break through here, we're going to be looking up towards the next key area of resistance to the upside and target 2 at the 99.37. So to summarize, we are going into next week with a bullish bias on the US dollar. So next market we're going to look at is crude oil. Now last week we were looking for a move up towards the 59.31, and we came quite close, but we didn't come up and take out the target. We started to pull back a little bit. So very simply put, going into this week we are looking for further advances to the upside in crude oil, and we're looking to take out the target set from last week at the 59.31. If we can get a pullback, and if we can get a pullback and a retest of broken resistance, turning support at the 56.53, this is going to be a great place next week to start once again to look for those bullish formations and patterns. We're going to be looking up towards the next key area of resistance to the upside and the target from last week at 59.31. And if we can get a break through here, we're going to be looking up towards the next key area of resistance to the upside and target 2 at the 60.60. Now, just bear in mind, as we pointed out last week as well, oil has been very, very choppy and corrective over the last few weeks. So if you are trading this next week, just bear in mind it carries with it a little bit more risk, as this market has been choppy and may continue to be so into next week. So the first pair we're going to look at is euro dollar. Now last week we highlighted the key area of broken support, looking to turn resistance of the 1.10740, and we highlighted this as an area to start to look for a bounce to the downside in this market. We did start to reverse from this area, and we did trade nicely to the downside, making our way towards the target set from last week at the 1.1000. So very simply put, anybody not involved from last week, if we can get a pullback anywhere in this area, possibly another retest will give you an opportunity to once again start to look for those bearish formations and patterns. And we're going to be looking down towards the key area of support to the downside and the target set from last week at the 1.1000. And if we can get a break through here, we're going to be looking down towards the next key area of support to the downside and target 2 at the 1.0926. So the next market we're going to look at is pound dollar. Now last week we pointed out that this market was structured to the upside despite the fact we have a strong dollar, and we're looking for a pullback towards the 1.28060. So very simply put, now we're getting this pullback from last week down towards this key area of broken resistance, looking to turn support to the 1.28060. This is going to be a place we're going to start to look for potential bullish formations and patterns. However, we will only be looking for these bullish formations and patterns if the US dollar index, which if you remember failed down below, tested on the underside, and then broke through. Okay, if the US dollar index fails to hold, okay, and it starts to decline back down below the support, then we will come and look towards the pound dollar as what we call a plan B currency with our traders. So essentially this is a plan B. So if we do not get that US dollar index move to the upside that we're looking for next week, we will look for the reversal trade in the pound dollar instead. And we're going to be looking at initiating longs in this market if these circumstances arise, up towards the next key area of resistance to the upside and the target set at the 1.3019. So next market we're going to look at is US dollar Japanese yen. Now last week we highlighted the 108.35 to look for a pullback into this area and a test in order to see if we can get a bounce to the upside. We did come back and test this area once again for the second time now at the 108.350. So very simply put, going into next week, this is now a great place to start to look for those bullish formations and patterns. And we're going to be looking at initiating longs up towards the next key area of resistance, the upside and the target set at the 110.80. Now, just as we discussed last week as well, this is quite a big level. There's quite a big gap between these key levels here. So if you're looking for a near-term target next week, as it's unlikely we will achieve the 110.80 in a single week, if you're looking for a near-term target next week, you can take the highs over here, roughly at the 109.450 or the 109.50. And if you want to hold on to this for longer, if you do get a position in this area and we start to move to the upside, you can look up towards the 110.80, but just bear in mind we may take a couple of weeks to get here because of the distance. So next market we're going to look at is Aussie dollar. Now last week we were looking for a pullback towards the 0.68480. We did get a pullback towards this area, but we didn't test it. So we came very close, but we didn't test it before we started to reverse to the downside. A little bit of a head and shoulders pattern in the 4-hour chart that we're looking at here. So very simply put, for anybody not involved to the downside from last week, what we would like to see in order to get into the Aussie dollar going into this week is if we can get a pullback in this area. Any pullback will give us an opportunity to go short, but preferably as always, if we can come back and retest broken support, turning resistance, this will be the best place to start to look for those bearish formations and patterns, as we'll have the bigger risk to reward setups. And we're going to be looking at initiating shorts down towards the next key area of support to the downside, the target set 0.6689. The next market that we're going to look at is New Zealand dollar. Now last week we started the week sitting at the 0.64060 key area of broken support, turning resistance once, twice, and we didn't really go anywhere last week. We started to break above it and we came back and we tested it at the 0.64060 on the overside here. So very simply put, going into next week, we are looking for further advances to the upside in the dollar index, and so we're going to use this as an opportunity to start to look for bearish formations and patterns from this area. And if we get those bearish formations and patterns from this area next week, we're going to be looking at initiating shorts down towards the next key area of support to the downside and the target set at 0.6255. So the next market we're going to look at is US dollar Swiss franc. Now last week we were sitting at the key area of broken resistance, turning support at 0.98880, which we highlighted last week. And we said that this was a good place to start to look for a bounce to the upside. We did start to get those bullish formations and patterns in this market, and we did rally to the upside towards the target set from last week. So very simply put, going into this week, we're going to be looking for anybody not involved last week. If we can get a pullback in this area, it's probably unlikely we come back and retest this once again. So any pullback in this area is going to give us an opportunity to look once again for those bullish formations and patterns. And we're going to be looking at initiating longs up towards the next key area of resistance, the upside, then target highlighted from last week at the 1.0027. So next market we're going to look at is US dollar CAD. Now last week we highlighted the 1.31980 for you, which was right here. And we highlighted this as a level to start to look for a bounce to the upside in the US dollar CAD. We did come back and test this level last week, and we did have a really nice rally to the upside, stopping short of the target set from last week at the 1.3347. So very simply put, going into next week, for anybody not involved from last week with this move up towards the 1.3347, what we're looking for now, as we're sitting at an area which is from the past, a previous broken resistance, turning support already at the 1.32680. This is a great place to start to look once again next week for those bullish formations and patterns. And we're going to be looking up towards the next key area of resistance to the upside and the target set from last week at 1.3347. And as always, if we can get a break through here, we're going to be looking up towards the next key area of resistance to the upside and target 2 at the 1.3429. And last but not least, we have gold. Now, last week we were looking for a pullback towards the key area of broken support, turning resistance to the 148.1390. We did get pullback towards this area, but we stopped just short of this, started to decline to the downside. So very simply put, for anybody who is looking to trade this next week, what we're looking for is if we can get any pullback in this area, and preferably if we can come back and actually retest broken support, turning resistance, as this will give us the best risk to reward down towards the target. Any pullback in this area, preferably another retest, will give us an opportunity to start once again to look for those bearish formations and patterns in this market. And we're going to be looking at initiating shorts down towards the next key of support to the downside of the target set, the 1449.30. And if we can get a break through here, we're going to be looking down towards the next area of support to the downside, and the target set at the 1433.80. So that is it from me for this week, guys. As always, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please let me know by liking, sharing and subscribing. A big thank you to everyone who does that on a regular basis, and a big thank you to everyone who has subscribed to the channel so far, and also for those of you who comment on the videos. I want to wish you a fantastic weekend, and I want to wish you all the best next week. The only thing left to say is take care, and don't forget to trade safely.